summer 1912. We're in San Miguel County, New Mexico. Today, we're bringing you an explainer looking at a highly specific, fascinating spatial footprint in American sports history, the heavyweight championship bout between Jack Johnson and Jim Flynn. We'll be focusing strictly on the geography, the training infrastructure, and how two massive athletic camps effectively occupied the high desert landscape. Now, the economic stakes for this event were set by a coalition of civic leaders right in Las Vegas, New Mexico, who placed a literal $100,000 gamble to secure the fight. Think about that for a second. That was a massive feat of civic boosterism for the time. Their ultimate goal was to physically transform their High Plains Railroad hub into a national sporting arena, banking on a massive influx of national sports journalists and tourists to put them on the map. So how did this actually materialize? Well, it helps to look at the twin municipalities of East and West Las Vegas. New Mexico had just achieved statehood in January of 1912, which essentially created a legal vacuum. This allowed them to bypass the highly restrictive prize-fighting laws that governed eastern cities at the time. Geographically, the region was anchored by the Santa Fe Railroad Depot, and this was absolutely crucial. It provided direct transportation from massive crowds and, of course, the fighters themselves, bringing them straight into the high desert via Pullman cars. Part 1. Flynn's Galeana's River Outpost, the Montezuma Hotel Complex. Notice the sheer scale of the structure looming behind the fighters. That is the Montezuma Hotel Complex. It's a 90,000 square foot Queen Anne-style stronghold, originally designed by the famous architectural firm Burnham and Root. Situated directly along the rugged Galeanas River corridor, promoter Jack Curley deliberately selected this massive isolated resort to serve as Jim Flynn's remote headquarters. The environmental utility of this canyon was actually central to Flynn's preparation. Sitting at an altitude of 6,400 feet, Flynn's entourage figured the thin air would give him a critical aerobic advantage. They fully utilized the rugged outdoor terrain for extreme physical conditioning, while also taking advantage of the resort's therapeutic hot mineral springs, billiard rooms, and bowling alleys. They essentially built a self-contained, high-altitude training village. You see, Flynn's physical preparation was deeply tied to his industrial background. Known as Fireman Jim, he used to work for the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad, literally shoveling coal to sustain locomotive steam. His New Mexico training essentially extended that brutal manual labor. He transitioned from those rail yards to high-altitude mountain running, and he practiced highly aggressive, completely erratic leaping maneuvers. The strategy was to use these wild jumps to offset his physical disadvantages against the reigning champion. Part 2. Johnson's High Desert Base, District 2 Integration. Now, instead of seeking out isolation like Flynn, the reigning champion anchored himself directly in El Distrito de las Escuelas. Jack Johnson rented a territorial-style adobe house at 2008 North Gonzales Street, which was built around 1870. This specific spatial configuration allowed Johnson, who was accompanied by his wife, Etta Terry Duria, to situate his entire entourage right in the middle of the local population, establishing a highly visible, daily presence in the town. And Johnson actively modified the property to accommodate his massive public persona. His team went ahead and constructed an outdoor training ring right there in the open yard, and they erected temporary wooden bleachers right alongside the historic adobe walls. By charging a 10-cent admission fee, Johnson transformed his daily light sparring sessions into a paid public spectacle, physically integrating his camp into the commercial life of West Las Vegas. The contrast between these two operations was absolutely stark. Up in the canyon, Flynn occupied the secluded Victorian luxury of the Montezuma Castle. Down in the urban center, Johnson integrated into a territorial-style adobe on North Gonzales Street. Their architectural choices perfectly mirrored their differing training philosophies. Flynn sought an isolated, grueling aerobic advantage, while Johnson operated an open, highly public exhibition of his sheer dominance. By the morning of July 4th, the physical realities of the two athletes were set. Johnson weighed in at 212 pounds, standing 6'2", and he planned to deploy a strict defensive posture known as the mummy guard. The challenger, Flynn, was significantly smaller at 193 pounds and 5'10". He was going to rely entirely on his stamina and those relentless leaping tactics he'd been honing up at the Montezuma. Part 3. The Arena and the Aftermath, July 4th, 1912. The physical reality of the arena itself really reflected the somewhat chaotic nature of the event. It was a temporary, open-air wooden structure hastily erected in East Las Vegas.
It turned out the boosters' massive gamble failed to draw those projected national crowds, which resulted in pretty sparsely filled seating. In fact, historical accounts note that carpenters were literally still hammering wooden boards together as the first spectators walked through the gates.
As for the match itself, it was a localized physical mismatch from the opening bell. Johnson effortlessly utilized his size and that mummy guard to easily parry attacks. Completely frustrated, Flynn resorted to those erratic tactics he practiced in the canyon, repeatedly leaping into the air to headbutt Johnson's jaw. This physical degradation of the fight eventually forced state authorities to intervene. In the 9th round, Captain Fred Fornoff of the New Mexico Mounted Police literally climbed into the ring to halt the bout. Academic records document that the bout ended in what was called a police finish, with Johnson sustaining only a slight cut on his lip from a headbutt. The physical aftermath was incredibly abrupt. Johnson immediately collected his $31,000 purse from promoter Jack Curley, piled his entourage into a touring car, and sped away from the sparsely filled wooden arena. The rapid dissolution of this massive boxing infrastructure was startlingly swift. Within just hours of the stoppage, the temporary camps at the Montezuma and on North Gonzales Street were completely dismantled. By the very next morning, the fighters, their managers, and their entourages had loaded themselves and their earnings onto Pullman cars at the Santa Fe Depot, steaming out of San Miguel County and leaving the empty wooden arena behind. The Civic boosters gambled an absolute fortune, and for a few intense weeks in 1912, a remote canyon resort and a downtown adobe became the absolute center of the sporting universe. It really leaves us with a compelling question. How does the sheer physical imposition of a sporting event, the sudden construction of wooden arenas, the rapid mobilization of railroads, the physical modification of local homes, fundamentally, if temporarily, rewrite the geography of a high desert town? It is a stark, fascinating look at the raw, localized infrastructure of early 20th century American sports.